Welcome to episode 19 of the Between Two Beers podcast. On this episode, we talk to Jimmy Pamment. Shay, who is Jimmy Pamment?
Well, he's a bloody big bastard, and he should be in the IPL right now if it wasn't for COVID-19. But he's in Papamoa. He's a former coach of Northern Districts who took the team when they had a hugely successful period, a lot of top-class players. Prior to that, he was a coach in New Zealand's National League with Hueco FC, made his name as a player in Tauranga. And prior to that, spent summers in New Zealand and summers in his home of Yorkshire in England, trying to make it as a fledgling professional cricketer. A lot of yarns, probably underestimated how much this guy has to offer in terms of the episode, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, what an incredible career. He talks about how he played against Paul Gascoigne in his earlier years in football. He talks about facing deliveries from Wasim Akram. He played under Ricki Herbert at Papatoetoe. He talks about the death of his father and how that affected and impacted his life in his sort of formative coaching years. He talks about coaching Kane Williamson, what you can say to the world's greatest batsman, how you can try to improve him. And he talks about his most recent experiences in India at the IPL, replacing Jonty Rhodes as the fielding coach, and the incredible highs and the incredible experience he's had. So there's a real lot in this episode. It's a really great one, and I hope you enjoy it. Jimmy Pamment, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it. Enjoyed the ones that I've sort of listened to already. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Us too. We're coming to you from Hamilton. I understand you're in Papamoa during this lockdown. Are you the kind of guy who's enjoying a bit of peace and quiet and taking the foot off the accelerator, or has this all been a bit of a struggle for you these last 5 weeks?
No, it hasn't really been a struggle for me, to be honest, Stephen. I guess when I'm at home, my occupation over the last 2 years, it's almost meant that I've been in isolation anyway. When I come home, I'm very, very almost reclusive, and I've just come home and relax and take the dog for a walk on the beach, and I've got lots of time to myself. So the last 5 weeks or so hasn't been too much different to how I usually act when I'm at home anyway. But obviously, I should be at the moment in India. Almost three quarters of the way through the IPL, but that's obviously been cancelled. But yeah, it's an amazing thing that's, I guess, going on around the world at the moment to sit back and look at. But to be honest, it hasn't really affected me too much.
Yep, life goes on quite the same for me as well. Let's get straight into it. Shay, how do you know Jimmy Pamment?
I think back in the old National League days, I used to take a trip over the Kaimais every now and again to go and watch Tauranga City. I think I might have gone over for a game. They might have been playing Central. I think my cousin Viv Wickham was playing for Central at the time. And one of my kind of lasting memories was thinking, and sometimes my playing career gets glossed over a little bit on the podcast, but thinking how, in comparison to James Pamment in goal, how I was just nowhere near that sort of stature, that level of kind of confidence, and it kind of knocked a young Shay a little bit in terms of his football career. But I went across over the Kaimais with Sam Wilkinson to try and link up with Tauranga City to play. I think after James had retired, maybe for the fourth or fifth time, and Grant
still haven't retired. I'm still waiting for the calls. I'm still available.
And Grant Cooper did my knee, and that was the end of me playing. And then I think the last time I saw James was a Melville away game at Links Ave. I think we did Tauranga City that day by a good margin. He was standing behind goals, and that's how I know him. And have you played against him, Stephen? You probably a bit more of an illustrious football career than I do. You ever get one past the big man?
I don't think I've seen Jimmy since around 2004. I understand that I may have scored a goal past him, but in our little brief pre-podcast chat, he asked me to explain that I did score, but Melville got relegated that season. So I think it's probably fair to bring that up. I've followed Jimmy from afar. Like I said, when I was just cutting my teeth in the Northern League, he was a real main figure in it. And when he coached Waikato with Declan, I was in America, but a lot of my best friends and close footballing contacts played under him. So I kind of know of him from others. So I'm looking forward to tonight, because there are a lot of layers to Jimmy Pamment, and his career's gone in a lot of different directions. So we're actually going to start, as we tend to do. We've asked around a bunch of your former players and contacts, and they've thrown up some interesting stories. The first place we want to start is, apparently you've got a great story about 3 balls you faced from Wasim Akram in the mid-90s. Do you want to give us some background about what that situation was and what happened there, Jimmy?
Yeah. It's I've done reasonably well for Auckland in the Shell Cup, and the tour opening game for Pakistan, who were touring that year, I'm not sure it was 95 or 96. I was selected to play in that game. It was at Seddon Park down in Hamilton, and I've been opening the batting for Auckland, like I say, doing reasonably well, and went out. We won the toss. We went out and batted, and first ball facing Wasim Akram. Obviously, at the time, Wasim Akram and Waka Yunus were the 2 gun bowlers in world cricket, especially in the shorter forms of the game. And I don't know why, but for some reason, Wasim Akram served up a nice half volley first ball, and I smacked it straight back over the side screen. And sort of halfway through, executing the shot, I was sort of saying, "Why did you do that?" What a silly thing to do, So rather than taking the bravado attitude of, "Yes, here we go, I'm in there, I know what I'm going to be able to do," but I knew what was coming. So next ball, he ran in exactly the same, but it was about 35 kilometres faster. Hit me flush on the badge on the front of my helmet. The badge exploded and landed sort of down on the floor right next to me. So I sort of casually picked it up and put it into my pocket and set myself up for the next ball. And I think I missed the next ball by about 2 metres. But the next ball after that, I managed to get a nick. And it went to, I think it was Inzerman standing in that second slip. It flew to him and he caught it. So obviously I put my bat under my arm and set off walking. And I must have been walking for about 30 seconds, pretty close to the boundary edge. And I get this noise underneath my helmet, saying, "Hey, you stupid pom, you're walking the wrong fucking way." Instead of turning around and walking towards the pavilion, I'd walk straight down towards the groundsman's shed at Seddon Park. And I thought, what do I do here? Do I turn around and walk all the way back about 80 metres, or do I just carry on walking? So I just carried on walking and casually went into the groundsman's shed and blamed it on concussion.
Amazing.
About 2 or 3 overs later, I'd taken all my pads off and sneaked around the outside where the crowd couldn't see me.
Brilliant.
That was my Wasim Akram story. Six and out.
Gold. That's amazing. What a great start. So many people will know perhaps Jimmy as a coach, but we want to get into, before we get into all the coaching stuff, we want to get into your playing career. And Shay, as he does, has done a very good set of notes, and he's found a quote from you that I kind of wanted to get into and help paint a picture of exactly who you were in your younger years and how you sort of came to be. So it says, "As a player, I never reached the heights I would have liked to. Certainly back home, there was always a massive disappointment that I didn't wear the white rose. I'm a proud Yorkshireman, and a big part of the reason why I set up camp in New Zealand was that I never got the opportunity to play for Yorkshire. That was a bitter disappointment." So, Jimmy, can you give us a bit of a frame of reference, really, on you growing up? I mean, you were obviously very talented at cricket and football. Were you better at cricket than football? Did you underachieve or overachieve at any of them? And how does that quote relate to you now? Does that still ring true?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, I was sort of equally just not quite good enough at both of them to secure an opportunity in the professional game over there in the UK. And, I was still heading back to the UK in 1995, still hoping for a chance and an opportunity to play in professional cricket back in the UK. But that opportunity never came. But as a youngster in the UK, and you're playing good level sport, through your schools once you've done your development years, and the same with the cricket. I was getting into a lot of representative teams and performing reasonably well in those representative teams without, I guess, getting a crack either, securing a professional contract or playing some more games on the fringe of professional cricket. certainly from a cricket point of view, it was deemed that I was sort of from the wrong area. A very dominant, very dominant leagues in Yorkshire as the Yorkshire League and the Bradford League, and if you did reasonably well in those leagues, then you tend to get more opportunities than what you did from the league that I was from, which was initially the Huddersfield League, and then I went into what they call the Central Yorkshire League. So, yeah, while I was, I guess, very proficient and obviously scored a massive amount of runs in those competitions, represented Yorkshire at 15s and 19s, I never got the opportunity to play a lot of second 11 games or first 11 games either. And I guess my football career sort of mirrored that a little bit. My father was an ex-England youth international. He was a centre forward, scored a massive amount of goals in non-league football. Played a little bit in the professional game, played some professional games for Bradford City, and was on trial at Blackburn, Huddersfield Town, Bradford Park Avenue. And my career almost sort of mirrored his a little bit. In fact, I think there was one time where I was three or four weeks in a row. I was on trials at different clubs trying to get an opportunity, and every week I'd sort of go and visit my grandma. She was a great supporter of mine, and she said, "Oh, where have you been?" I said, "Oh, I've been on trial at Leeds," and then the next week, I've been on trial at Bradford, and then the following week, I've been on trial at Sheffield. And she said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Are you a footballer or are you a criminal?" She said, "All these trials." I said, "Well, I'm not having a look with any of these trials I'm having." So yeah, but I mean, one of my early memories playing football, sort of the Northern Intermediate League, was a really strong league. It was an under 19, under 18 league, and like I say, one week I played for Bradford City. The following week I played for Sheffield Wednesday, and then there was a Youth Cup game the week after for Leeds United that I played in. This would have been '85. And we went up and played Newcastle. A game that had been I think it had been sort of postponed 3 or 4 times because of the inclement weather around that time of year. And the guy who'd been playing in goal for Leeds, he wasn't available because I think he was playing reserve team football, and they were scaring around who can play in goal. So I went and played in that game, and that was a game. Paul Gascoigne scored past me from about 35 metres.
Stop it.
It might have been
Really?
40 metres, but remember we played the game at Newcastle United's training ground. It was a midweek game, and we think we kicked off around 12. The reason why I remember this is because the first team of Newcastle United were standing on the sideline watching the game. They must have done their training, and they were watching a little bit of the game. And Gascoigne ran, and he smacked this goal past me from about 35 metres. And I'll never forget it. Running, sliding on his knees in front of all these first-team players. And I'm pretty sure it was guys like Beardsley, Waddle, Kevin Keegan, all these guys, giving them the fingers, going, "None of you fucking cunts could have done that." This is a 17-year-old kid, and everybody's going, "That kid's going to be a bit special." But he carved us up. That was the only game I ever played for Leeds in youth football. And I didn't play too many more for Bradford City. And Sheffield Wednesday, I used to get to go and train with them on a regular basis. But never got the opportunity. And I think at the age of 19, 20, I decided that I was going to do the summer to summer thing for a few years, pursuing my cricket career. And I did that for 7 years in a row. There was only one winter where I stayed back in the UK, which was 91. So between 88 and 1995, I only had one winter. So it was cricket all the way.
Can you settle a legend or a myth that's going around about whether or not you played professional rugby league or on the books of a rugby league team? How much truth is there to that?
Yeah, no, I was never. Once again, I was never signed as a professional. Played a lot of rugby league, yeah, and at schoolboy age. And once again had a number of trials playing rugby league as a kid, but was never signed on the books of a professional organisation. Good friend of mine, a guy called Mark Elia, who was a Kiwi international in the 80s. Mark was a very good cricketer as well. He's a big reason why I went to Grafton United Cricket Club in Auckland. Mark was over in the UK. He was playing for Kent Invicta in the early years. I think it was about 84, and he came up north with one of their players, and he played cricket for us. And then Mark got signed to St Helens, and I go and have a run around with Mark and the St Helens boys over there when I got the opportunity. Yeah.
So you said you weren't quite good enough to make the professional grade in either code. What were your limitations in both football and cricket, and what were your strengths?
Yeah, I guess I was actually quite late to goalkeeping, but I don't think it really matters. I sort of always wanted to follow my father's footsteps and be a centre forward, and a big bruise in number 9 and stand on people's toes and elbowing in the ribs and that sort of thing. And I could knock a goal in as a younger fella, but I didn't grow until I was about 14. And when I grew quite significantly in a short period of time. So there was 6 months there where I couldn't move. My groins just didn't catch up with the rest of my body. And I was just so slow, but, I sort of refused to stop. Didn't want to stop playing. So I went in goal. And I found that I really enjoyed it, playing in goal. So I stayed in goal from about 14, 15. And for me, it was just opportunity, really. In my area, which was obviously Huddersfield coming through, we had a very good young goalkeeper, a guy called Lee Martin, who went on and played for England under 16s. He was a professional footballer for a number of years. So I guess he got the nod around our region. Likewise, when I was down at Sheffield Wednesday training with them regular, there was a guy there called Kevin Pressman. Well, Kevin went on and played until I think he was about 36, 37 in the professional game with Sheffield Wednesday and with Leicester. And I guess, from a goalkeeping point of view, it's, there's only one place. And certainly back in those days, there wasn't too many full-time contracts floating around for sort of 16 to 18-year-old goalkeepers. You had to go into the non-leagues and serve your time and I guess earn your stripes unless you were really outstanding. And by choosing cricket, I didn't afford myself to do that. I was playing as a 16 to 18-year-old at a club called Emley, which they're quite a strong non-league club in the north region of England. Made a couple of good runs in the FA Cup, played West Ham in the third round in one game. I wasn't playing in that, but that's the sort of pedigree of the club that I was playing for. We got to the FA Vars final in 1988. I just sort of didn't give myself time to progress in football. But certainly in cricket, it was, like I said before, I think it was just, the area that I was in and the refusal almost to move and go and play in those leagues almost counted against me a little bit, because all my peers, that I was playing with around that time, they certainly weren't scoring the runs that I was scoring, and I guess in the manner that I was scoring them relatively quickly. But I didn't get that opportunity afforded to me. Could I have done more? Well, I probably could have moved, but I guess the stubbornness in me I didn't feel I was playing in an inferior competition. It was just that they didn't select guys from our region as much as what they did the others.
Did you ever jump behind the stumps in cricket? There was no kind of transition or correlation between the goalkeeping and wicket keeping. No interest there.
No, I did a little bit when I was younger. Yeah, in the early youth stuff, maybe 14 to 15. But past that, no, I always wanted to try and affect the game a little bit more, and I was generally sort of leading most of the teams that I was playing in those days. So I wanted to pick my time when I could have a bowl, and certainly I was doing quite a lot of batting as well. So no, there was no real, I guess, crossover with wicket keeping and goalkeeping.
Jimmy, one of my colleagues at the Herald, very well known and respected journalist, has a very strong theory that footballers rarely make good cricketers, but rugby players do. And he wanted to know, there are obviously exceptions, but as a general rule, he seems to think that's the case. Do you think there are any sociological, physiological, or logistical explanations for this phenomenon? And do you agree with it?
I think that once again, a lot of it comes back to your upbringing. If you look at a lot of the footballers in the UK, they're more likely to be football and cricket specific, whereas over here in New Zealand, there's probably more guys because it's what you do more at that early intermediate development age. So I don't think there's anything sociologically or physiologically around it, other than maybe it's more of an environment thing. Certainly, I know a lot of very good professional footballers in the UK who equally could have been good cricketers, but I think we'll probably see here in New Zealand, because there's more kids running around playing rugby than there are football, that those skills maybe cross over into cricket in the summer months as well. That's I guess the only reason I could answer that, Stephen.
Okay.
And I often see a football come out for the cricket warm-ups and a little game of keepy up here, a little rondo. Why is that so popular?
Yeah. I think certainly in the UK, and I know there was quite a serious injury to one of their test players. I think it was Rory Burns, I think. But I watched the English guys doing their warm-ups and their football. They take out the portable goals, so they're almost putting up, these 3/4 size goals. They've got guys in there with goalkeeping gloves on, and they actually get stuck in. And for me, if I was the coach, I wouldn't allow it. And I know they've stopped it now after that serious injury. It's because predominantly most of those guys are frustrated professional footballers. They'd rather be professional footballers than professional cricketers. Whereas, I used to say to the Knights guys, look, I said, I'm a football purist, so I'm not watching you guys disrespect and disregard the game for 15 minutes, but, let's play touch, because you're bloody good players at touch, because you're all rugby players. And then we started playing the soccer volleyball, and then the skills started to come out. So I think you'll see the New Zealand teams, whether it's domestic teams or the international teams, they play a lot of this soccer volleyball rather than the actual competitive, 5-a-side or 6-a-side. But I refused to let our guys do it because I knew what was going to happen. They've all got their spikes on, so they're not playing with moulders or they're not playing with flat sole shoes. They're playing with spikes in the bottom of their shoes and they're rubbing each other's shin with it. And, it's a recipe for disaster. And I refuse to let it happen.
Well, let's get you across to New Zealand. So you come to New Zealand for a Wellington club. Is it Nai that originally brought you over? What was your role there? And was that full-time? Were you playing, coaching? What was that?
Yeah, no, I came over in '88. So I guess one of the Vegas of the time around that time is I wrote a letter to them. You probably wouldn't do that these days. I'd met one of their senior players. He was a New Zealand international. I'd been on the ground staff as you're preparing for an ODI or a test match. There's generally a bunch of guys assigned to help you with that preparation. And I helped the New Zealand team. I think it was 86, 87. They were there. I think it was 86. I'd helped them with their preparation for 4 or 5 days, bowling at them and throwing at them. And I got to know one or two of the guys. And Ewen Chatfield was obviously part of that group. And he said to me, if you ever fancy coming over to New Zealand, just drop us a line and keep in touch. So when I decided that, I wanted to have a season playing cricket down in New Zealand, I wrote him a letter and he sort of got back to me, or somebody from the club got back to me and said that one of their players was actually playing in the league close by to me. So he came and met me and got in touch. And as it turned out, there was 2 of us from the same club came over to Nai in 1988. Yeah, and what a culture shock that was. To arrive in Nai, very, very sort of ambitious, but quite naive, didn't really know what I was going into. We arrived at Auckland. My mate did he was 2 or 3 years older than me, so he did all the arrangements. And
how old were you at the time, Jimmy?
Oh, I was just gone 20, I think. 19. I think I'm 19, maybe just gone 20.
Okay.
He was way more intelligent than me. He was way more worldly than me. I think he'd been to Spain once for a holiday, and I'd only been to Wales with my family. So I let him do all the arrangements, and the club over in the UK actually paid for my airfare, so I didn't have to do anything other than turn up at the airport. So we set off on Tuesday evening, I think it was, from the UK, and we arrived in bloody Auckland on Friday morning. So as you can imagine, we took the long route. We went through nearly every state in the USA, and we came down in Hawaii, and we came down in Rarotonga, and we never even got off the plane. So we got to Auckland at Friday, and we sort of walked through the gates at Auckland, and I'm expecting somebody standing there with a sign, Jimmy and John. My mate was called John, and we're looking around, and well, what do we do now? And I said to John, I said, well, there's nobody here. What do you think we should do? He said, oh, there must be a bus. There must be a bus to Wellington. I said, oh, how far is it to Wellington? He said, oh, maybe an hour and a half. So we sort of asked around, and we finally, we got the gist of it, that Wellington was still another sort of 7 hours on the rod, or 8 hours on the rod, or 2 hours in a plane. So we rang down to the club and said, look, we've got to Auckland, but that's as far as our arrangements have got. What can we do? So luckily they booked us on an Air New Zealand flight, and we got down there about 7 o'clock on the Friday night, and we fronted up on the Saturday and played our first game. And it was a bit of a culture shock, to be honest. But
and you mentioned you did summer to summer. So how long did you stay in Wellington before you made the shift to Auckland club cricket?
I did 2 seasons, 2 summers down in Wellington. So I played my first season 88, 89, and then shot back and played the summer of 89 back in the UK, and then came back to Nainai for the 89, 90, and then went back to the UK for 90, and then came back to Auckland after that. I got an opportunity to play for Grafton United in the Auckland competition, which was significantly better conditions, stronger teams, and obviously I felt that my game was developing as well with those opportunities and with those back-to-back seasons, and I really enjoyed my time with Grafton United. They were an inner-city club. Once again, it was a club that was full of characters. Victoria Park was our home ground. The old club rooms were a derelict building, so the opposition would refuse to get changed there. The opposition would refuse to come and have a beer with us because it was just a derelict building that we put a fridge in and threw a few curtains up when we needed to get changed in it. But some real characters, obviously an inner city club. There was some significant characters in and around that club which helped me settle in, and I did really well. The Horn brothers were there, Phil and Matt Horn, who both played for New Zealand. Willie Watson was there, was a New Zealand cricketer as well. So we had a strong group of players, and our captain was a very good club cricketer. He played a little bit for CD and he played a little bit for Auckland as well, but a very focused guy who got us organised. And I guess for 5 or 6 years we dominated Auckland club cricket, and out of that I got an opportunity to progress and play for Auckland in 93 through to 96. So it was a good move for me, but I was travelling backwards and forwards all the time, so those back-to-back seasons sort of assisted me with the development of my game.
I'm going to go, Steve. How does a transfer go in New Zealand domestic cricket? Is it like a football transfer, or how did Grafton find out about you from Nainai? How does that come about? No, I mean, I'd obviously you just sign a 6-month contract and you just come and play for the season, and I'd done 2 seasons down in Wellington. I'd had 2 reasonably successful seasons. Certainly the first one, we won the championship down at Nainai. It was the first time they'd won it for a significant amount of years, and we went there back the second time, and it was just an opportunity to progress really with going to Grafton. The contact initially was through Mark Elia, who I explained, the Kiwi international who played for our club back in the UK. And then Matthew Horn came over and played in the Yorkshire area as well. And Matthew was from Grafton as well. So there was a couple of guys there who were keen to, I guess, sign me up and get me playing for them up in Auckland. But in the end, it was a really good move.
So 22, 23-year-old Jimmy, are you sort of semi-pro cricketer and you've got a job on the side? And is the dream to be a professional cricketer and do it full time? And then blur that into when you got back into football. So talk me through those sort of years. Yeah.
So I guess semi-professional very much, Stephen. Even when I sort of started playing for Auckland, which, the domestic season from a time constraint point of view is quite demanding, we were still very much amateurs. So you'd have to go to work. That certainly in those days with Nainai initially and then with Grafton, doing a lot of work for the club. So you're doing some coaching for the club, you're coaching the kids, you might do some school visits. But outside of that, you are, just trying to find a little job just to keep ticking you over. Both those clubs, would look after me with a car. So you get a sponsored car. And I'm not sure if you can remember back in those days, I'm not sure really how old you guys are, but in the early 90s, New Zealand, the cars weren't of the greatest of standards. So I think the first sponsored car I had was an Hillman Avenger, which was interesting. You're driving around with your name on the side of an Hillman Avenger, and then a Toyota Corolla or a Mazda 323, which had Dominate written all over the side of it on our captain's instructions. So Yeah, I was just glad they spelt dominate right and not turned it into Dominatrix or something like that. Driving around Auckland in a yellow 323 with Dominatrix on the side of my car, but yeah, no. So very much part time, but trying to put the hours in to obviously significantly improve, and I was still aspiring to be a professional cricketer back in the UK. That was still my ambition, I guess, until 1995 when my wife and I decided to put some roots down permanently in New Zealand.
Right. So my notes suggest you popped up at Papatoetoe. That must have been around that time.
Yeah.
So was that the part of the journey where the professional cricket dream had died and you decided I'm just going to go back to football, or was it work in tandem?
No, not at all. No, my wife and I, Cecilia, we got married in 1993. Early 1993, and we got married in January down in Hamilton, and then my wife's from Hamilton, so yeah, we got married in Hamilton. I was playing for Grafton at the time. Decided to go back to the UK for the 1993 summer, and while we were back in the UK during that late summer, my wife fell pregnant, and Benjamin, our oldest son, was due to be born in April 1994. So I'd signed a contract to go back to the UK to play the summer of '94 up there, but the timing just wasn't going to work. So we decided to stay back in New Zealand in 1994. And obviously, once people got to know that I was sticking around for the winter of 1994, there was a few opportunities, and people knew I'd play football, and I got a call from Ricki. Ricki Herbert was the coach of Papatoetoe with Billy McClure, and I think it was around February time. They were building up for their season that started early April or late March, as our winter seasons do. So I actually got quite excited about it, and thoroughly enjoyed my time down there at Papatoetoe. It was a really good family club. They really made my wife and I really welcome, and it was almost like riding a bike, I just sort of stepped back into it. I hadn't played since sort of late 80s, but just felt really good and made a really good start. And we had a reasonable team. Ricki was the coach, like I said, with Billy McClure. And I think Ricki was a little bit like me when I sort of started coaching, didn't play enough. He was probably more effective on the pitch than he was off the pitch at that stage of his coaching career. Every time he played, we won. But when he sort of stood on the sideline and tried to coach us, not that he was a bad coach, but, he was definitely more influential when he played. And we had some good results. It was a strong winter league, that was. I remember playing against Waikato. Declan was playing for Waikato. They were a reasonably strong team. Waitakere were very strong with the McClenahans and Roger Grays and Grant Schofield in goal, and Neil Woodham, Stevie Kane. They're a very strong team. And North Shore were physical with the Hagans and the Jaspers, and it was a good league, and I really enjoyed playing in it. And I think I played all the way up to Queen's birthday weekend. We had a double header. We were playing Mount Wellington on the Friday night, and then we're due to go to Napier to play in the last 16, I think, of the Chatham Cup. And I dislocated my shoulder on the Friday night at Bill McKinley Park, and that was me done. The Auckland cricket physio said, "Nah, that's it. You're done. Just concentrate on your rehab now and get yourself ready for the season." And so that was my time sort of came quickly to an end. I didn't get a chance to get back at all to play for him for the rest of that season, but thoroughly enjoyed it.
Okay. So you mentioned Declan there. You obviously coached with him at Waikato FC. What are we missing in between that time? A bit of cricket, a bit of football, a bit of playing, and then you decided to get into coaching?
Yeah. I sort of always coached, all the way through my playing career. I always coached. I remember when I stopped playing for the under-15s cricket, I stepped back straight away and coached the under-13s. And when I moved up to the under-17s, I stepped back and coached the under-15s. So I sort of always been a coach, in some respects, all the way through. But I guess my journey from Auckland to Mount Maunganui was once again, I just finished the 1995-96 domestic season. I always struggled, I guess, in first class cricket to really, I guess, make a real impact, because I knew deep down that I just didn't have time to work enough on my game. because I had a family at that stage. Like I say, we had one son, and number two was on the way. He was due in November 1996. So while other guys, the younger guys, were sort of working on their games and they could get by on the daily allowance that we were afforded, I used to go straight back to work. And there was times I was working even before turning up, for a day's play. So I knew I was always behind the eight ball until the game went professional, and I wasn't around when this is cricket, went professional. So I just finished the 95-96 domestic season, and I got a call from Eddie Edge. I think they'd gone to the summer league by then. There was a summer league that maybe started in January and finished in something like May. And they had a keeper, obviously, at Mount Maunganui, and he must have got injured. And somehow Eddie had come across my name, and there was 4 games. There's 4 games to go. So I said, would you be keen to finish the season off? And I said, yeah, I'll be keen. The cricket's come to an end. And so I came down and played for the Mount. And I think the first game we lost 5-0 to Napier. They were a strong team as well. I remember Mick Waite standing on my toes and elbowing me in the nose. And, and they had some fine players, Andy Birchenough and really good player out wide. I just can't remember his name. Halford, I think, poor Halford. But they tortured us. It was the first game. But I remember playing really well. Obviously when you lose 5-0, there's always plenty to do. And I remember diving around and Duncan Lowry was playing, and Jed Parkinson there with the 2 centre backs. And I remember Duncan saying, you're bloody good, and he's a thick Irish accent. He just sort of gave me a lot of praise, and and I thought, oh yeah, that's good. And anyway, we went to Central the following week, and Central were a reasonable team, but I don't think they were quite as good as the Waitakers and the Napiers. And I remember it was the first time I'd ever been to Kiwi Tier Street. And I loved going to Kiwi Tier Street ever since that game. Quite an intimate ground, always a reasonable crowd. And I had a really good game. And we drew 1-1. And it was obviously a significant change around for Mount Maunganui because they'd been really struggling. The following week, we went down to Woolston and we beat them 3-1. So they've sort of finished the season on a little bit of a high. And I'd got a bit of a boost, I guess, to my ego. And Hetty said, I'm signed on already for next year, and I want you to come down and be the number 1. And, this was the start of the 96-97 season. He said, I'll get the chairman to ring you. I'd obviously met the chairman. I'd heard lots about Dave Cook, and how he'd sort of built this club from nothing and turned it into, one of the strongest teams in New Zealand. And they were on a little bit of a slide, but, they were determined to put them back where they felt that they wanted to be. And I really enjoyed playing with some of the players. Paul Probert was playing, and a guy, Tony Valentine, was playing. And, there was a few English guys, like I say, Jed Parkinson and an Irishman, Duncan. Good lads. And I really enjoyed, I guess, the camaraderie and the crack that comes with, the sense of humour and all those sorts of things that come with it. So I made a call, obviously talked to my wife, and we decided that, we'd move from Auckland and move down to Mount Maunganui in 1996 and try and pursue, I knew it wasn't going to be a professional career in football, but, the National League was of a good standing, and it would give us a chance to start afresh and I guess build a different life for ourselves that we saw up in Auckland. And I guess testament that we're still here now, and we thoroughly enjoy this region. It was a good move to make, but I guess from a football point of view, I just scratched my head with how it was treated. With the promises of what we're offered and what was delivered was far from delivered to us. So it was an interesting time.
What do you mean? What were you promised and what was delivered or not delivered?
Yeah. So I think, there wasn't a lot of money involved. There was a small signing on fee and maybe a couple of appliances to help us, with the move. So we were, which I think is a common theme around football teams in that era, I think. But one of the funniest things was, we made a couple of trips down for Auckland to look for some accommodation. We were just looking for rental accommodation initially, and Dave Cook, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll get some houses for you lined up, no problem at all. So my wife and I came down. Like I say, my wife was heavily pregnant with our second son, Joseph, and we made the trip to come down, and I rang Dave and said, right, we're here, Dave, where's these places you've got us to have a look at? And basically he'd just been in the paper, and he just got these he just got these, places out of a paper. He hadn't looked at them. I think we turned up at the first two, and my wife started crying. What are you doing to us? What are you doing to us? I said, well, I'm just taking this guy at good faith, and so we went back to see him. I said, mate, did you go and check those places out that you sent us to? He said, no, but, my associate did. He had a lady that worked for him. He went and checked them out. I said, are you sure? He said, yeah. I said, mate, they were absolute shitholes. There's no way we're moving. And then just sort of, you get things, like that, sort of happen. And they got me a job. They got me a job with BHP down on the wharf, and they said, it's a 40 to 50 hour a week job, and it's good money. And it was good money, but unfortunately it was casual. So I think the first week I did work 45 hours, but the second week I worked 7. And then the week after that I worked 3. And then, all of a sudden when the season rolled around and I'm getting ready to play football, I had to work 78 hours. Little things like that, and obviously the Mount at the time were going through some significant financial issues as well. I think there was a little thing where David he got a grant from Trustpower to buy some floodlights from the Kawerau Woodyard, but I think the Kawerau Woodyard had actually donated them for free, but Dave took the money anyway and spent it on other things. But unfortunately, I didn't see any of that. But hey. Like I say, we made the decision. We ended up looking after ourselves in terms of finding some accommodation. We were very fortunate that a guy who was involved both in the football club and the cricket club down here, he saw the predicament we were in and stepped up and helped us out. And we haven't looked back, but there was a few funny moments at the start of that season. And in the end, I ended up not playing because, I was available and I was training, but, I just felt that I hadn't been treated properly. So Eddie ended up getting a guy over from the Waikato. I think it was Grant Morstan. And I think Grant played he might have played for 5 or 6 rounds until everything really blew up. And that's when all the good players just disappeared. Even the local guys, the Duncan Lowrys, the Jet Parks, they just stopped playing. And the Mount just became, I guess, a little bit of a cock case, really. And I came back in and we played to the end of the season. It was bizarre, really. I'm not sure if we won a game. We didn't come very close to winning a game. Eddie would bring 2 bottles of champagne and 12 glasses into the changing room before every home game to try and, encourage us to win. But every game he had to take them back out again. And he tried everything. I'll never forget He came to one training. Like I say, at one point there was only about 7 or 8 of us training, and he came and he sat us all round in a circle, and he said he'd been reading a book about Sitting Bull or something like that, and he sat in the middle of the circle, facing away from us, most of us, and started talking about the plans for the next game. There was only 7 of us there, and 3 of us we couldn't hear what he was saying. So there was a lot of bizarre things went on in that 1996 season. We went to, I remember we went to Nelson one Friday night. We did a Friday night game down in Nelson. We flew from Taronga, and obviously we had to fly back to Taronga. The game didn't finish till about 8 o'clock. So by the time the aftermatch had finished and we got back to the airport at Nelson, and we on a charter flight, we're flying back towards Taronga, and we get to Taronga. We're just going round and round in a circle. And somebody pulled the curtain back from where the pilots were sitting, and he's, what's going on? We can all see our houses, but we're not getting anywhere near. He said, they forgot to leave the runway lights on. So here we are, here we are driving round and round Taronga Airport, about 300 metres up in the air, but we couldn't go down because somebody forgot we were coming back at that time. So we ended up having to go to Auckland and getting the bus back. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning when we got back, and just sort of summed it up. And unfortunately, there'd obviously been a lot of hard work done at that club, but that was at the point really where it wound up. They tried to keep it going through the winter, but didn't last long after that, unfortunately. So then obviously Taronga City took over. There was a lot of us were keen to play and keen to carry on, and we went across to Taronga City. I didn't go across to Taronga City until 1998. They'd won the Division 1 in 1997 under Larry Seals, and they were playing at Wharapai Domain at the time. And then we went and won the Northern Premier League back-to-back, and I think it was 98 and 99. and we had a really strong team, and I was really happy to be a part of that with a lot of those guys, I guess, who had been involved at the Mount at some stage as well, the Valentines and the Paul Proberts and some very good young players who'd come through Tauranga City, your Brett Derrys and your Jeff Rickards and those sorts of guys. Your Clinton Boyles was on the scene, Kevin Manville. Yeah, we had a really good team at that, I guess, for that level. Yeah.
So your profile sort of grew on and off the field. You became a bit of a leader there. And then National League sort of disbanded and recreated itself in 2004. And then you were named, along with Declan, as the coach of Waikato FC for the first season of that National League.
Yeah.
How was that process? Did you and Declan go in together as a team, or who was selecting the coaches, and how did that all come about?
Yeah, we'd obviously worked together in the 2004 Winter League. As you know, Declan had worked with Paul at Melville in 2003, and obviously you guys had a very successful season. Tauranga, we jumped obviously from 99, winning that Northern Premier League, jumped into the National League in 2001, held our own. 2002, we did extremely well. We had a great season in 2002. We finished in the top three, I think, made the playoffs. We made the Chatham Cup final, losing to Napier at Napier. And then 2003, it all sort of fell apart a little bit. And that's when they started changing the landscape in terms of how they were going to do the National League. Declan had obviously split from his wife at that time, and Kerry and the two boys were living over in the Mount. And I was coaching a young junior team, and obviously Harry came to play with me because his cousin Harry Jesse was playing with us, and I had quite a few good young kids playing for me at that club, and obviously Jesse was there. Harry came across, so that's how I guess I spent a bit more time with him. And obviously during that time he was coaching Melville, had a great season, and they knew that they'd had a bit of a fallout, and he said that he wasn't going to go back and play coach Melville in 2004. And I sort of said, well, I think I'm going to put my hand up for the Tauranga job. Now that we know what's happening with the leagues, I'd obviously been captain, I've been a senior player, and there was nobody really, I guess, around who was chasing it. So I said, look, I'm going to go and do it. If you fancy coming and having a go, you can come across. But I'd sort of been taken by his coaching a little bit. 2 or 3 years earlier, there was a program, obviously, as you know, the federations and the national body, they were changing all the time. We had a regional rep program, and then we went to these programs. I think one of the programs was called the International Player Development Program. And that was
IPDP.
The IPDP. Yeah. Yes. And I was asked by Mark Youngjohns to oversee the Tauranga Ipi-Dipi Centre, and really it wasn't an international player development program. It was just about creating revenue, because there was no skill side of how you get into these teams. Whereas before, when you'd had a regional rep program, you actually had to prove that you could play a little bit. So we had all sorts of kids on these programs. Obviously from ages 8 through to 18. We had to get them all organised, and we had a game day down in Taupo, and I'd taken a young group down. There might have been under 8s, under 9s, and we'd finished our day. And Declan was coaching a group of 12-year-olds, and I went along and watched, and I was just sort of taken with how they were playing. It was completely different to what anybody else was doing. And obviously Declan was very vocal on the sideline, very very encouraging. But you could just see that there was something different. He had something in his imagination that none of us had, And there was a lot of very good coaches and a lot of ex-players who were involved in the different teams across those programs, but there was nobody doing anything like what Declan was doing. So I sort of had an idea that he had an imagination to be a good coach. And in 2004, when he came across and helped me with Tauranga, and obviously built a relationship with a number of the younger boys there at Melville, and they came across as well. And
me as well.
And you as well, Seamus. That's right, yeah. And you as well. Let's not forget you did have a playing career, Seamus.
So Jimmy, you talked about those kids playing beautiful football, and at that same time, I mean, we had Declan on the pod, and he admitted himself he actually hated those seasons at Waikato because of the way the team played.
Yeah.
Was the understanding that you couldn't play that way with the group of players you had, and did you hate that season as well, or how did you feel about that?
No, I did. Look, I didn't hate that season. Look, a big move for me was I don't know whether in my nature it's a carer sort of server type characteristic. I had a group of guys that I had a lot of respect for and really wanted to play on the National League stage. The guys that I played with in 2002, your Craig Flowerdays, your Brett Derrys, your Gary Boards, those types of guys. I was really keen for them to be playing National League football again. I was really disappointed and was very vocal at the time that Tauranga was sort of held up as the ideal sort of club for the new National League setting, but then we didn't get a franchise. So I was a little bit disappointed with that. And I was really determined to try and give those guys an opportunity to play in the National League again. And I also thought that I could help Declan because I knew he'd have some challenges with administration. I knew that he was very quick to fall out with people. And I thought, well, it was almost like, and we talked about it openly, that, the Brian Clough, Peter Taylor relationship where, you've got the tortured genius who's got lots going on in his mind. And then you've got the calm, calculated guy who can go and talk to the board and talk to the administrators and try and make things work from that point of view. But, deep down, I knew that we couldn't play that type of football in year one because we just didn't have time on. We just didn't have time on task with the players. The idea was to try and get a foot in that first season, to establish a relationship and then try and build relationships with Wintec, with the university, with schools, and try and get some more guys almost into full-time football. So the younger guys, can we get the youngsters doing exactly what Declan did with those Ole guys, training more often, training as their priority, but also doing other things. So that was the idea around, bringing in, some senior type players who we knew could, do a job for us and get some results. But, it wasn't in the way that, we both wanted to play, but we just couldn't do that because we were training 2 nights a week. We were 12 of us traveling in a bus, from Tauranga, finishing work at 4:30, getting over there, getting out, getting training. Getting
speeding tickets on the way back.
Yeah, and I got a couple of speeding tickets. That's right, I did. Yeah, right. Mainly pulling the trailer. That was the bloody thing. Yeah, I didn't realise that you couldn't go faster than 90 when you were pulling the trailer. Yeah, so we ditched the trailer after that. That was the challenge.
A fairly it was a successful season, really, wasn't it? Making the playoffs the first time I think Waikato ever did, and then Declan carried on and did a second year, but you walked away. What happened there?
No, I did 2 years. Huh? Yeah. No, I did 2 years. Yeah, no.
You
So
did
the first
2 years?
year, yeah, I did 2004, 5, and then 5 and 6. Yeah, you're right. I mean, we had a great start. We beat Manawatu 4-0 in the first game that we ever played, and we'd signed Bunsey and we'd signed Michael Utting. I think it was an amazing lead into that first game. I mean, really, we were lucky to get on the park. From securing the franchise. Then the board of directors and the people who were helping them. They were all over the place. They were relying on gaming funding coming in. And I remember, I think it was either the Friday before the first game or maybe a week before the first game. Keith Ward was based in Cambridge, and he basically said, "We've got no money. We've got no money. We've been preparing 29 guys, I think 30 guys, and a lot of them have been traveling." And he basically said, "We've got no money, And Declan basically, "Right, that's it. We're out of here. We're gone. And I just said, "Calm down a bit, mate. Let's hear him out, And I don't know if he had a tie-up with actually gaming machines himself, because I think he was offering to pay us in $2 coins or things like this. Not us, but pay the players in $2 coins. I think, well, I'm turning up with big bags full of sandwiches and fruit, for the after-training food. And, so now I'm going to be turning up with all these $2 coins to pay people's expenses. But, there was some people also doing some tremendous amount of work who perhaps, didn't have the skill set to do it. I just remember Grant Stanshaw just putting in so much work, and, we were sharing emails all the time, and I was sending him emails at, 4 or 2 a.m. and he was sending them to me at, 5 or 6 a.m. And, it was incredible what we did just to get the team on the park. Was a great opportunity to give those boys that showcase in the Waikato, and we did have a reasonable start, and then we went through a bit of a lull, and I think remember with your pod with watching Mark there, we got to the point where we had to leave Michael Hutton out. He was commuting. He was one of our big signings along with Shay. And we were expecting big things from those guys, but we weren't professional in terms of how we were structured. The training venue at Wintec had never hosted football before. It had holes all over the place. It was dangerous. So we were having to do things that we shouldn't have been having to do just to try and, I guess, get a meaningful football program up and running. And we had to leave Michael out in the end. I think it was the travel. It was his step from professional footballer to very much amateur football. And he just lost his way, and he threw about 3 games away in a row. And obviously, being a goalkeeper, sitting on the sideline watching this, I'm sort of thinking, what are we doing here? So I had a chat to Michael, and he agreed that, he needed a bit of time out, and then eventually he ruled himself out. So Fulch came in, and it was like that all the way through. Bunsey was great. Bunsey played the full first season. He led strongly. And Craig Flowerday was outstanding. Brett Derry is a little bit of a D'Artagnan. When Brett Derry gets on a bit of a run and gets playing, he's somebody that everybody else follows. And obviously we unearthed a couple of young players who really stood up and took the opportunity. Colin Gardine, for example, in the first season was outstanding and playable at times. And we did. We did. We did it the hard way, I think, because we'd done quite well in the middle phase of the season, and then I think we lost 2 or 3 when we'd almost just needed 1 point to secure a playoff berth, and we ended up having to go to Napier in round 21, and we just needed to avoid defeat because they were in 4th place, and we beat them 3-0. Bunsey scored a volley. I think I remember Bunsey scoring a volley, and Derry got 1, and then I think Brent Mayhew ran away and whacked in a third and took us to the semi-final, which was great because from where we'd come from and what we'd had to go through to get to the top 3 and to be, I guess we were not only the third highest point scorer, but we won the third highest amount of games, and I think our defensive record was 3rd best. So we were clearly the 3rd best team in that league that year.
Can I jump back? Sorry, Steve. Can I jump back? How frustrating was the Bay of Plenty bid being turned down? Because you talk through the spine of that team, and a lot of it was that Tauranga City group.
Yeah.
When you were driving over the Kaimais back and forth, are you thinking, how much easier would this be if we're just doing this at Links Ave and we're not having to do this?
Yeah, it was very frustrating, Seamus, because like I said, New Zealand football, when they, I guess, put the mandate out to tenure, they sort of used Tauranga Links Ave and Park Island Napier as the sorts of grounds that, that they were looking to utilise and clubs that they were looking to promote. And I guess for us not to be able to get ourselves organised, the financial, I guess, side of it was significant. I think it was 45,000 off the top of my head just to enter the league. And, and Tauranga City was, I guess, a family-based club. We sort of never paid players. We used to get a little win bonus, a team win bonus when we were in those National League days, which was great. But, I just don't think we're in a position that we ever showed the ambition to try and, secure a franchise, which, caused a lot of problems with the players because we, like you say, we didn't want to be having to drive over the Kaimais, 3 times a week to play for Waikato. But once that became, the only way, then we did it with great enthusiasm.
So, Jimmy, what happened at the end of that second season with Waikato? You and Declan decided to part ways, and where did you go from there?
Yeah, well, we didn't sort of part ways. I think what happened, Stephen, is I took an opportunity with New Zealand football. I was offered the National Development Officer's role, which Shay had. And I think Shay might have gone back into professional football at that stage. I'm not sure if he took off overseas around that time, but Shay was the national development officer in the Waikato region, and they'd asked me to take up that role. Obviously, I went through the application and interview process, and one of the, I guess, restrictions around that role was that they didn't want me to be involved with the National League. They felt that would be a conflict of interest. It had been 2 tough years. The second year we didn't. I think right up until round 18, 19, we could still make the playoffs, but we just didn't have the character in that team that we had the year before. Obviously, Brett Derry had moved down to Gisborne and was part of that revolution down there with Fallon, with a number of other Tauranga players that travelled down there. Craig Flowerday initially had made himself unavailable. He did come and, I guess, have a flirt with it around the Christmas time, but he didn't commit to it. Bunsey missed 16 rounds, I think, in that second season with injury.
It's quite a lot, isn't
it? Yeah. So we just didn't have the character in that second year, and it did become quite tough. Yeah, it did become quite tough, and obviously, ultimately for me, taking up an opportunity to be fully employed in the game with, I think it was Neil Evans at the time, who was in charge of Federation 3. He said, we feel it's a little bit of a conflict of interest, and if you do want to take this job, we'd rather that you're not involved in Waikato FC. And I mean, we had to work extremely hard after season 1 to get a second season, so maybe the writing was on the wall anyway. We might not have been re-engaged for 2005, sort of 2006-07 anyway. In the end, I don't think Declan went for it either. So we finished on a little bit of a downer, really.
Around that time, Jimmy, and talking to some people close to you, you lost your father. And from what I understand, he had a very powerful, strong influence on you growing up. Did that affect any of the decisions you were making around that time, or how did that affect you?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, Stephen, significantly, yeah. So I just started my new job, actually, around that time. It was July 2006. I flew back to the UK early July to spend a little bit of time with him before he passed away. He'd obviously got cancer, lung cancer, which spread very rapidly right through him, and he was only 61. So I guess for all the family, it was a big shock that such a strong sort of man fell very quickly, and around that 2006. 2007, like I say, I just started a new job with New Zealand Football as the Waikato Bay of Plenty National Development Officer. And I just didn't want to put myself through too much, actually. So I stepped away from senior football. I remember one game, actually. I hadn't played any senior football for a little while. And I think Sam was involved at Wanderers with Cozzy. And Roger got involved as well. And I come back, like I said, my father had just passed away. I come back from the UK, played a game for Wanderers at Porritt. We played against South Auckland Rangers. And it was a torrid game. It was a torrid game. People were just kicking lumps out of each other. And I'm standing down in goal thinking, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? And it finished with an all-in brawl. I think both teams finished maybe with 9 players each, and it finished with an all-in brawl. And I just walked off and said to Cozzy, I said, "Don't ring me next week, Cos." I said, "No, you got to play next week." He said, "We're playing Melbourne next week. We're playing Melbourne." I said, "My heart's just not in it, And and I guess being so far away, Stephen, from being over here, back in here in New Zealand, and I didn't head back for the funeral because I just left before he passed away. I'd spent 3 weeks with him, and I guess on reflection, I just probably didn't give myself enough time just to grieve enough properly. And it did affect me for a long while. There were some things going on as well around how that season had finished with Waikato, and you take things personally. What effort you've put in. What sacrifices you've made with your family, and I guess to have people. I guess I'm happy to be criticised if it's if it comes from a place where people understand what you've gone through to try and achieve it. And I just needed a little bit more time just to step away and do some things that I thought could be positive.
Because you were joined around the same time, or just prior. Your younger brother Tom came out to New Zealand as well, I think around 2005. So for some of us, we kind of thought, who's this? Is this Jimmy's boy that's playing in goal for Tauranga now? What's happened here? So there's a bit of an age gap between the two of you, right?
There is, yeah. He's 13 years younger than me. My sister's only 3 years younger than me, and then all of a sudden we got this young fellow 13 years, after. But no, he's a good lad. He came out in 2007, I think. Hamish, yeah, he got married in 2005. And him and his new wife, they'd been to New Zealand for a holiday with my mum and dad 5 or 6 years earlier, and they enjoyed it, and they came out and they wanted to have a look at, I guess, a little bit of a lifestyle change, and they've stayed ever since. So I think he started playing for Tauranga City in 2007, and he's still playing now. He's obviously, like all of us, a little bit frustrated with the current situation that he's not still around playing for Tauranga City at 37 years of age. So yeah, they are the Pamments. We've had the number one jersey at Tauranga City Bar 1 year, I think, since about 1998. So,
numbers. Jimmy, I just want to jump ahead a little bit now to when you took charge of Northern Districts in cricket in 2013. I know we're covering a lot of territory. You've had a bloody long career of coaching and playing, so there's a lot to get through. But I'm going to go to the cricket now.
Yeah.
And can you just give us a brief background of how you got the job? Like, what were your credentials to get that job? And then how big a deal was that, getting that Northern Districts cricket coaching job?
Yeah. It was massive. Yeah, it was something that I've been, I guess, working towards since I got. I guess, like I said before, I've always tried to, be influential or lead or coach. When I moved down initially to Bay of Plenty in the late 90s, very quickly I was the captain and the coach of the Bay of Plenty senior men's team because, there's nobody else filling that void, and it just sort of fell to me. And equally, when I'd finished, I guess, travelling with the Waikato FC the following summer, I got involved with Bay of Plenty cricket, and I was coaching their senior men's team, and we had very good success for 4 or 5 years in a row. We won sort of the regional competition. They call it the Fergus Hickey 3 out of 4 years. And I'd been earmarked by Northern Districts to start doing some work in their programs as well. It was, I guess it was just a continuum of the work that I've been doing in that environment with Bay of Plenty Cricket initially. And then when they started giving me opportunities with Northern Districts A team, I coached that A team for 3 or 4 seasons. I'd coached the under-19 team. And then they put me as an assistant coach to Grant Bradburn in the Knights in 2012-13. And when Grant decided that he wasn't going to reapply for another tenure, then, the job went up, and I'd had some opportunities as well with New Zealand cricket at that stage. I'd been on a couple of New Zealand A tours. I'd done the under-19 World Cup over in Australia, which was a very successful campaign where we finished in the last 4. We just missed out to India in the semi-final. So, 2013 rolled around, the Knights job came up, and I had 2 options really, because Mike Hessen had spoke to me about joining him in the Black Caps. He was looking to build a new team, I guess, around that time moving forward. But my heart was with Northern Districts and the players that I've been coaching for a number of years, and I put myself into that process, and they thought I had the skills to do the job, and I did that right up until 2018, and learned a lot, and it's quite interesting, I sort of reflect on your coaching journey and the styles that you incorporated early in your coaching journey, especially when you're coaching seniors. A little bit different with kids, it's a little bit different, but I reflect on how I coach now senior men and obviously, youth players, very different to what it was back in those days, where I was a little bit more autocratic and a little bit more, determined with my tactics and things like that. But it's been a great journey.
So I was just looking at some of the names that you were actually coaching across your 4 years. It's guys, Kane Williamson, Southey, Bolt, Watling, Sodhi, Santner, Seifert, Anderson, Brownlee, Divsich. How closely did you work with a lot of those top guys over that period?
Yeah, very, very closely, yeah. Obviously, the boys that were based in the Bay of Plenty prior to heading across to play for Northern Districts or New Zealand, we've done a lot of work with Kane. Started with Kane when he was about 15, 16. Trent, the same. a lot of the good young lads that we've developed over in the Bay stepped seamlessly into Northern Districts and then onto New Zealand as well. And one of the good things about working with those guys is, from a coaching point of view, is you're learning from them just as much as you're offering assistance to them and guidance to them. So Northern Districts, we've had a great, program in place for a number of years. Pat Malcolm, I guess, was a little bit of a catalyst for that. Long-term athlete development philosophy, making sure that guys were extended where they needed to be extended. And at times that meant that, especially with age group tournaments, we forego an opportunity to win the age group tournament to try and make sure that we extended the individual player first and foremost. And that's something that we've always done. And I guess that's why we've been able to develop a number of players that have gone on and represented New Zealand to a very good level. And at one point, I think we had, 5 or 6 world-class players, when you're looking at Trent and you're looking at Kane and you're looking at Tim and BJ and Corey Anderson and his pomp. These guys were right at the top of their games in world standings and not just international standings. So, yeah, it was a good program to work in. It certainly wasn't all my work, but I was very glad to be playing a small role, in and around at that time.
You can ask what I want to ask, Steve.
So how do you coach one of the world's greatest batsmen? Is he beyond criticism? If Kane Williamson has 4 bad innings in a row, is there any advice you can actually give to him with his batting? What is the coaching there in that situation?
Yeah. You've always got to be able to coach. Yeah. I guess when you're working with players of that level, for me, it's a common sense process. One of the great things I've always found about Kane in particular, BJ is very similar, is they're always looking for improvement. They're always looking to ensure that their training is competitive. There's no sessions for the sake of having sessions. There's always some real meaning in those sessions, and for me, it's a common sense approach around guiding them to what is their strengths. And if there is a weakness that's been exposed, then, just chipping away at that and just trying to make sure that, you help them develop what they're building towards. One of the great things about a lot of those guys is they understand where they're going to in terms of what they're preparing for, whether it's 2020, one-day cricket, different types of surfaces, and their preparation generally comes back to that. So, if you can guide them and you can keep challenging them, I guess when I've worked with those guys, it's been physically demanding, especially in the early years, because the volume of balls that they would hit, while they were searching for, that feel-good factor, that sweet spot, that efficiency, takes a lot of hard work from the coach and the player himself. So we do value hard work. We did value hard work, and those guys put a lot of work in and still do.
So I've sat through a lot of football team talks and pre-match changing rooms, and I'm kind of well versed in how that situation goes. But what do you say to Kane Williamson before he goes out to bat? What exactly, is there any message? Is there any need for any sort of pep talk, or is it just you just let him get on with it?
Yeah, it's a lot of it's preparation. It's certainly there's no rousing Churchillian speeches, around cricket changing rooms, leading into the start of the game.
Is that hard for you though, Jimmy? Because I've got it on very good authority that some of your pre-match team talks are very, very inspiring. So was that something that you had difficult that you found having to shelve that in the cricket environment?
Yeah, yes, but captain's king in cricket. Seamus, captain is king. Coaches about preparation, so you got to make sure you got your bases covered leading into the game. You've done your scouting efficiently, so you know the opposition's strengths and weaknesses, and you've shared that with the team. You've prepared your own team by tactically, painting a picture of what they're likely to experience. And then basically the captain is the king, and you offer your advice, or you offer your views if you think there's something that's relevant, but certainly it's not as important as maybe in that football environment where you're trying to get everybody on the edge of their toes, and because it's a physical challenge, and whereas cricket's a little bit more sedate and say mindful, but because obviously you need to be intelligent to play football. But it's less, I guess, about the physical and more about the mental.
So on that, let's hone in on Kane Williamson as an example. Is he really that unflappable and just Mr. Nice Guy, cool and calm under pressure? Because he comes across completely in all of his public appearances like he's in charge of everything. Emotion, what he wants to say, how he wants to say it. Is that what he's really like?
He's fiercely determined. He's extremely competitive, but he's got a real, I guess, emotional intelligence. He's got a real awareness around, I guess, how he's portrayed, and certainly since he's been captain, I think he's done a great job around how he's done that, when he's talking to the media. But underneath there is a fiercely determined cricketer. Preparation, like I say, I've never come across anybody who prepares as thoroughly as what he does, physically, mentally, technically and tactically, very proficient. So, there's a lot of work that goes in there. There's nothing left to chance. It's a game of challenge. He's not emotionless, but he certainly takes great confidence from his preparation.
What do you mean? What do you mean specifically by preparing mentally and physically? What's he doing?
I think he wants, from a physical point of view, I think he wants to make sure that he understands what the challenges are going to be in front of him. So what are the bowlers going to try and do to him on that respective wicket? So he'll, leading into that game, his preparation will just be solely focused on that. He won't be hitting balls for the sake of hitting balls. A lot of guys, and I certainly reflect on my time in training, and we didn't quite have the facilities that these guys do have now, but I always just have a net, and I would just try and get some feel-good factor from the net that you were having either the day before or 2 days before, whereas the guys now, they're definitely preparing specifically with what's about to happen in mind and what their options are going to be. And obviously with 3 formats at the game, it provides great challenge. And mentally, if you know that you've prepared accurately, well, that gives you a lot of belief. I use a little model of, I think training gives you belief. And then once you've taken the belief out into the environment and you've performed, that's where confidence kicks in. I don't think you get confidence until you've actually performed in the arena. But if you can prepare with accuracy, then it gives you a good opportunity to be successful in the heat of battle. And that's what he does extremely well.
Yeah, so you said Kane has a very good way of being perceived, or a good image of being unflappable. Have you actually ever seen him lose the plot or act in a way that you wouldn't have expected from Kane Williamson?
Has he ever punched a hole in a dressing room wall when he got run out? Or was that only you?
I just lost you a little bit there, Stephen. You just sort of broke up a little bit, but
I'll ask again.
It must have been funny though, because Seamus is chuckling.
Yeah. Okay, I'll ask again. So you talked about Kane Williamson's the way he's perceived as unflappable. Have you ever actually seen him lose control or lose the plot or act in a way that you thought was very un-Kane Williamson?
No, not at all. No, I know when he's disappointed. I've sensed he's been disappointed at times, but no, he hasn't shown it in a demonstrative way. And cricketers are renowned at times for throwing their bats around, and I certainly used to do it. It's not something I'm proud of, but I'd smash my helmets around when Wasim Akram wasn't smashing them, and smash my bat in the changing room in frustration. But I think that's more a realization that you either let yourself down or you haven't done the work that you needed to do. It's quite an insecure thing where I've never seen Kane do anything like that. I know when he's disappointed. I've seen him get out a couple of times where he hasn't perhaps taken a good option, but I've never seen him lose the cool. But a number do.
Yeah. So these top cricketers, Bolt, Williamson, Southey, they're away so much. I think Mike Hesson, when he resigned from Black Caps coach, said he was only home sort of 40 days a year. A lot of these guys wouldn't be too far off that. So when they are back in New Zealand, how seriously and how invested are they in the Northern Nights, the domestic season? Do they really care, or would they prefer to just be resting and home with the family?
Yeah, Yeah, good question. Yeah, because it was always a challenge, I guess, trying to incorporate them back into our program from time to time. I think when they come back and they know that they're building towards something, then it was always easier to incorporate them. But if they came back and they weren't quite sure what was on the horizon or where they sat, with the New Zealand stuff moving forward, then sometimes it could be a little bit disruptive, because you build a group, and I guess you're in the middle of a program, and then all of a sudden you get two or three guys thrown into that. You'd think, the qualities that they bring in, it would enhance your team's opportunity to win the next few games, but sometimes it became counterproductive because they either were tired or they weren't quite sure what they were building towards in terms of what's happening next with New Zealand. So not always, a seamless transition bringing them into the team. But I think with ND, we predominantly had a good group of guys, and they generally respected what we were trying to achieve at that particular time when they did come into that program. And I think it's individual as well. Some individuals find it much easier to get motivated to come back and play for ND. Others, perhaps, would prefer, generally the bowlers, they would prefer to be putting their feet up and resting or doing some physical training away from the game at times. So, yeah, it was a balancing act that we managed reasonably well during my time.
Cricket seems to be a game which is really hard on families. If you're successful at it, like I said, you are away a lot because you're so often on tours in different countries. And I want to sort of merge this into your decision to go to India in the IPL. Obviously, does the family go with you? Did you go by yourself? And is that a difficult part of the job that you've decided to do?
No, the family don't come with me as yet. Yeah, my wife was going to pop over to this IPL that's just been obviously deferred until a later date. But the two previous seasons that I've had with Mumbai already, I've been over there without my family. I work 100 days a year for Mumbai Indians, so IPL takes up about 70, and then there's generally 3 or 4 what we call development camps, where I'm working with some of the younger guys in the squad throughout that time as well. So generally, other than IPL, the times up there are relatively short, just short little trips up there. But obviously IPL, generally you're away from mid-March until mid-May. So it's 2 months away. So it's not as significant as, I guess, an international coach or an international player who, like you say, potentially could be away for upward of 300 days in the year. So that is a real challenge. I guess one of the things that sort of came into my consideration is that my kids, they're not young anymore. They're, Benjamin's 26 and Joseph's 24 and Victoria's going on 20. So, that they're grown up. It would be much harder, I think, if she was spending a lot of time away and they were very young. When my kids were very young, I was just in a van 3 times a week traveling over the Waikato.
Can I ask a Mumbai specific question? When you are staying in Mumbai, are you based at the Hotel Lalit next to the airport?
Sorry, I missed that, mate. You broke up a little bit.
No worries. It was Mumbai specific. So when you are staying in Mumbai, are you staying in a hotel while you're there, or do they put you in a house?
Yeah,
is that hotel the Lalit next to the airport? Is that the hotel that you guys stay at?
No. Our owners, we're very fortunate. Our owners, they've got their own hotel down on the Marine Parade, down at what do they call it, Nariman Point. It's called the Trident. It's a 5-star hotel right on Marine Parade. So we're very fortunate when we're there. We stay there. If I go over to the development camps, they've also got their own corporate hotel, boarding house called Beverly Park, which is where our training facilities are. So Mumbai Indians are an unbelievable franchise. It's a real privilege to work for them. I think out of all the IPL franchises, I'm very fortunate to be working for these guys in terms of their structure and their care system, especially for their players. They go over and above for their players and obviously for the staff. It's a great organisation to be working for.
We've skipped a little period there, and I think it's important to we want to get into the IPL stuff. But you left Northern Districts after 4 years, I think it was. Was that your decision? Was that just the right call to make at the time? And then progress to how did you end up in the IPL?
Yeah, it was. I just signed a 2-year contract actually. So after my first 2 years, I was offered another 2 years, and I just finished those 2 years, and I'd just been offered a new contract with Northern Districts. So I just started that first season of the next two, and this opportunity came out of the blue. I wasn't really seeking for opportunities, but I just felt that perhaps if I waited for another 18 months, that I might not get this opportunity again. And it was just too good to turn down. It was something that always sort of interested me, and the fact that a franchise like Mumbai Indians had almost headhunted me and said they wanted me to come and do the job rather than would I go through an application process was quite flattering. I left on good terms with Northern Districts. We were progressing nicely. It wasn't as if my time there was coming to an end. It was just an opportunity to try something new and something different.
So, what exactly is your role with Mumbai, and how did you become that specialist role?
Yeah. So I'd obviously done some specialist fielding work with New Zealand teams, and I think I started in 2011 when John Wright was the coach, and John's obviously heavily involved in Mumbai Indians as well. They'd had John T. Rhodes as their fielding coach right from the inception of the IPL, and his
bloody
time,
good fielder.
yeah,
bloody
he
good
was
fielder.
a good fielder. Yeah, he was
Perhaps the best.
Dynamic fielder. Yeah, absolutely. And so John T. had been with them right through, and his time had come to an end with Mumbai. I'm not sure why, whether it was his decision or their decision, but I took the Knights up in 2014. We won the domestic T20 competition, and we got an opportunity to go and play in what they called the Champions League. And we played up in India, and we played Mumbai Indians, and we beat them. And we beat them quite significantly on that night when we beat them. And to the credit of the boys who represented ND that day, they fielded unbelievably well. We got runouts, we got catches, and it always stuck in the mind of the general manager of the Mumbai Indians. And he came and spoke to me in the hotel after the game. He said, "I won't forget that fielding performance." He said, "One day you might come and work for me," as if he was like, turning my eye and all that. I thought, whatever, mate. I'll be back here with Northern Districts for the next 4 years in a row. Don't worry about us. But they cancelled the Champions League after that, and so we never got an opportunity to return. But obviously, with John T either deciding he didn't want to carry on, or them deciding they wanted to make a change, they got in touch with me, and I was the man that they felt could help move that fielding program forward. So I got invited to go up and meet them and share a few of my philosophies, and obviously with the Northern Districts boys, I'd been strong in that fielding area, so I had some strong philosophy and I guess a foundation of work, a body of work that needed to be done to meet those ambitions. So I showed them that, and I showed them, I guess, some in-game, what I thought were tactical opportunities to develop that program, and they really liked it, and they went for it, and so they gave me an opportunity to get involved. And so I've done 2 years. First year we just missed out on the playoffs. We should have made the playoffs. We lost to a very poor Delhi team in the last round to miss out on the semi-finals, and last year we went all the way. We went all the way to the final and obviously won it on the last ball, which was an unbelievable experience. To be part of the final and then to be part of the bus parade around Mumbai.
I was going to say, what are the celebrations looking like after you win the IPL?
Yeah, it was quite interesting. Obviously, the games don't finish till past midnight. So by the time we'd left the changing rooms, it was probably gone 2-3 o'clock, and you get back to the hotel, and they had a function for us on at the hotel, and I went up and had a shower and went into the function room, looked around, and there was about 500 people there, and I couldn't recognize anybody. I was like, where have all these people come from? So I had a couple of quick beers and couldn't find anybody who I knew. And and disappeared back. But we flew back to Mumbai from Hyderabad the following day, and we had an unbelievable reception back in Mumbai. Our owners have got a house right at the very top of Mumbai city, and they had arranged an open-top bus to go from the house, drop down onto what they call Marine Parade, and along the front to where our hotel was. And it's a massive amount of people. Great experience.
I was in Mumbai with the All Whites. We went over for a tournament there. It's not an easy city to get around in a bus at the best of times. How difficult was it when people are celebrating a cricket win?
It was incredible. So we had the old-fashioned London type open-top bus, and running alongside the bus was about 10 security guards on each side of the bus carrying a rope. So you've got you got millions and millions of Indians just trying to touch the bus and trying to get as close as possible. You got people driving alongside on mopeds and cycles, and it was just carnage. But when we finally made it to the hotel, it would have been about 45, 50 minutes later. These security guys that were running alongside the bus with the rope, and the bus wasn't going that fast, but these guys were just drenched in sweat. They probably would have given you a run, Stephen, when you were doing your running challenge. But I felt really sorry for them. Yeah.
Just a quick one. I'll jump in again. A couple of our previous guests, Jeremy Brockie last week, spoke about what it's like for him in South Africa. Do you get recognised as a staff member of the Mumbai Indians when you're in Mumbai and asked for autographs and those sort of bits and pieces as well?
Yeah, you do. Certainly not as significant as the players, And in IPL time, you're confined to the hotel unless you go out with a security guard, or unless you're going out to training in the bus. So we can sneak around a little bit. Obviously Shane Bond's part of our coaching staff, myself and Shane, and we've got an Australian trainer. We'll try and get out for lunch if we can, and we'll probably go to 3 different doors of the hotel and then meet round the corner and try and sit down and have a bite of lunch somewhere. But we do get, and it's all good really, but they are very fanatical and they're very in your face, and and they want selfies and they want autographs. But I guess I try and accommodate as much as possible. But we do have to listen to the security guards during IPL time, because it can get out of hand. If I was recently up there at a tournament just before the lockdown. It was a corporate tournament which leads into the IPL tournament. And we played, there were 16 teams in this tournament. We made the final, and all the week that we'd been playing these games leading into the final, there would have been 50 people at the most in this stadium. And we made the final, and we played against Indian Oil, and we had a few stars in our team. Hardik Pandya was in our team, who was a significant player in India. Shikhar Dhawan was in our team, and Bhuvaneshwar Kumar was in our team. All of a sudden, 25,000 people turned up at the stadium for this Friday night game, because nobody had been turning up to watch these games. They'd hired no security. So as soon as the game finished, 25,000 people were on the ground, and then they were sort of banging on the changing room doors. It was actually quite frightening, that we were locked in the changing room. We couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't get out the back. We couldn't get out the front, until they finally got some police there about 2 hours later and started to wield these sticks at these guys and get them away from the changing room doors. But it's quite intimidating, but you know that they're doing it, just out of, passion and fervor, but it can be quite intimidating.
It's incredible, the audience, isn't it? I was doing some research for the show. I was watching a few YouTube clips, and there's one of you doing some sort of, it's only a couple of minutes, it's some fielding talk or something, and it's had about 25,000 views. Like, Jesus, there's an audience for absolutely anything.
Yeah. Was that the one where James is wearing the sleeveless training top, Steve? Because I watched that one. I watched that one a few times to see those arms.
It's very hot over there, Seamus. It's very hot over there.
Yeah.
I do lose a lot of weight at training. Yeah, it's really demanding, especially this time of year. Well, obviously we're usually over there, because it's very humid, it's very hot, and while we do all our training in the evening, you just sweat from head to toe, and I'm drenched at the end of the sessions, and it's a challenging job.
Jimmy, is this the dream job for you? You mentioned it's 100 days of the year. You're working with some of the very best cricketers in the world. There's no secret how much money is involved in the IPL, so I assume you're sort of relatively taken care of. and you're a fielding coach, you don't have all the pressure of the number one. Does it get any better than this in terms of cricket coaching?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure what the next chapter is, Stephen, but I'm certainly not out there searching for the next chapter, and I never have, to be honest. All these opportunities that have come my way have almost been by chance, really. But I must be doing something right. But it is a good job. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoy working in that environment. The owners are very demanding. They want to win. They've won 4 IPLs. They support the team. They support the management. And they expect good results. But they do support us with, what we need to go and do our jobs. Good players. Any coach will tell you the best form of success is having good players. And we've got good players. So I really enjoy working in this environment. And I've just signed a new 2-year contract. So hopefully, when this current situation clears and we can get a schedule in place for IPL 2020 and then obviously next year as well. And let's see what happens after that. But it is a very good job that I thoroughly enjoy and respect and try and deliver to the utmost of my ability.
Am I right in thinking that it was a Mumbai Indians link that led you to US cricket as well? Was it Kieran Moray? Have I read that right?
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, Kieran's one of our scouts, and Kieran got himself involved with American cricket through some of his associates over there, and he asked me to go and help them with their fielding program. They were preparing for a T20 tournament down in Bermuda, and they didn't have a fielding coach. I was due to go to Mumbai, and I went to Mumbai in July for a pre-season camp for a bunch of players, and from there I flew straight over to California and helped them with their preparation for Bermuda. And unfortunately, it didn't go very well in Bermuda, and they didn't qualify. And in true Indian style, even though it's in America, the officials were Indian. They cleared all the coaching staff out, and they basically said to me, "Can you hold the baby until we appoint a full-time coach?" So I ended up doing 3 series for them. Yeah, and it was great to meet some new players and be in a different environment and have a look at some of the talent around the States. And obviously, one of the bonuses about traveling around is you get to go and see some unbelievable places. And, it's been a long time since I've been in the States, but I'd never been down to Fort Lauderdale before, and we went there. And I'd never been to Trinidad before, and we went there for the West Indies List A tournament. And we had a tournament up in Dubai, which was good, and we had some success. And then we finished with a tournament in Kathmandu, which didn't go as well as what we would have liked. But, I saw some places there in a short period of time, and obviously met some young fellas who were trying to move their cricket forward as well for the American team. So,
pardon my ignorance, but is that US team made up mostly of Indian expats, or have you got a few like American sluggers that didn't make it in baseball that come and try and give cricket a go? What does that US team look like?
Yeah, no, it's a balance. Yeah, there is a lot of Indians. Yeah, there's a lot of West Indians as well who carry dual passports. So guys who were either born in the States and are now living in the Caribbean, or they were born in the Caribbean but their family comes from the States. So a lot of dual passports going on. So I'd say it was probably 40% Indian, 40% West Indian, and then there's a couple of guys. We had 2 Australians in the team, both from Melbourne, ironically, whose family had passports in America. And we had a South African, ex-South African international, Rusty Tehran, who now lives in, I think he's moved across to San Francisco. So, yeah, it was a mix, yeah. But there's a lot of cricket being played in the States, so it is a sleeping giant, but there's not too much structure in place. So the challenge for them now administratively is to try and get the structure in place so that all these players get to showcase themselves on an equal footing. So selecting the team is a real challenge because, like I said, there's not a lot of uniformed competition where guys can go toe-to-toe and actually prove that they are the best players. But there is some real talent. So hopefully in years to come, they can get themselves structured and become a force.
Jimmy, I just want to quickly loop back to the IPL, and I'm going to throw you a bit of a curly one because we do like to test our guests at times on Between Two Beers. Is there any moral or ethical dilemma working for a family in Mumbai whose personal wealth is, I think, around 60 billion, when there are, I think, 2.5 million Mumbai residents living in abject poverty? Or is that tough for you to deal with?
Yeah, mate, I see how much they do. The Reliance Foundation, if you ever look into just what they do with their finances, they are doing a lot of work in the community. I mean, how much is, I guess acceptable, or you would say would be, given their wealth, but they do a massive amount of community work. Like I say, Mrs. Ambani's just been on recently, just telling them what they're doing during this current crisis that we've got underway. It's incredible, really. But
it's a confronting environment, isn't it? Had you been to India beforehand? Like when I went with the All Whites, I'd like to think I'm pretty worldly, and I've seen some stuff, and I've been in and around the islands, and there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of have-nots, but it was next level when I went to India and I laid eyes on it for the first time, and again, moving from A to B, it is like
it is
heavy.
And Mumbai, Mumbai is a city where everybody sort of transitions towards Mumbai because they think they can make $1, and there's a lot going on in Mumbai, and you do see some things which do, really challenge you when you're out and about. 2014 was the first time I went to India. It wasn't to Mumbai, but to get to Mumbai and then to slowly sort of build up the courage to start wandering around and having a look around Mumbai. And when I was up there last time, getting on the trains and having a few trips around, it's amazing how they do, I guess, coexist in those environments. But we try our best, Stephen, to be good citizens and and share what we do, and they do run initiatives which do, I guess, give a lot of people a lot of joy and some people some relief at times. But I do understand your question.
Sure. All right, Jimmy, we're getting towards the end. I've got a few bullet points. Like I said, we've asked a lot of your friends, colleagues, contacts for some good talking points. I'm going to run through them. You can fend them off. You can answer them. You can do whatever you want with them. So the first one is from a former player. He said, get Jimmy to tell us about the time the guys were having a party in the room above him at the Blue Water Hotel in Napier and how he got them to quiet down.
I did wander out with a towel wrapped around me, and I did ask them nicely if they wouldn't mind being quiet on a couple of occasions, but they didn't want to quieten down, and we were getting ready for our game the next day. So in the end, I think I did end up having to banjo one of them.
Well, you're an imposing figure, and I think that has left an impression on a few of your younger colleagues. I think, Stevie, you've got a few more comments or observations from some of James's former teammates.
So former player described you as super nice, but a psycho under it, and I did not want to cross him. Is that a fair representation?
Oh, I'm not sure, mate. I was competitive. I was always competitive, but I'm not sure, mate. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm a split personality.
Next one. Couldn't keep his goal kicks in the field of play. They went left or right, but never up the guts.
I had a few challenges. So for a while there, I did have a dodgy groins. I think I played a season in 1997 for Carrow. I couldn't get the ball off the ground. I don't know.
It can happen. It can happen.
The pumice ground that we used to play on in Carrow, I couldn't kick it hard enough to get a tee and create a little bit of a mound to put the ball on. So but I did have some dodgy groins. Sometimes, my kicks did go a little bit astray. Sorry.
Okay. And there's rumours of a story about you punching a hole in a dressing room door after getting run out, and then years later, your brother broke his wrist punching the changing room door at Bay Olympic. Is that something that runs in the family? Is that a Pamment move?
True. Yeah, it's a true story. Yeah. Now the red mist. Yeah, he's obviously got ginger hair like I do, and sometimes the red mist descends over us. One of the good things about I punched a hole in the door at Mount Maunganui. It's quite frustrating, actually. It was a Bay of Plenty representative game. We were playing against Hamilton, and my dad was over visiting. Him and Mum had come over for a little holiday, and I was determined, to put a score on the board, and started really well and pushed one to mid-on and set off running. And when I looked up, my mate was standing, in the crease, and he wasn't going to move, so I had to turn and try and scramble back. Dive full length, got covered in shit, so, and then I had the dismay of having to wander off, so I wandered off and, put a hole. But the next day, I found a piece of blackboard. So I put the blackboard over the hole on the door and then wrote the batting line up for the second innings on it. So turned it into a positive.
There you go.
And it's still there to this day. Well, it was until they pulled the pavilion down. But yes, I guess the red mist of the ginger hair, I guess, is a true phenomenon.
Okay. Well, that's the end of my pot shots. I think you handled them quite well. Jimmy, just tell us this. We haven't really addressed the whole COVID situation, what it means for the IPL, what it means for your job. Are you just playing a waiting game, much like everyone else, to see what happens?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, still waiting to hear, I guess, when they feel that, they might be able to run the competition. There's no chance of them running at, I guess, this stage. Monsoon kicks in towards the end of May. So generally, May, June, July, early August is very wet in most parts of India. So there's going to be no chance, I wouldn't have thought, of the competition being run anytime soon. So I do know that they're looking at some windows in advance of the T20 World Cup, which is going to be held in Australia in October through November. So they might be looking at some windows. Can we run it in advance of that? But there is a future tourist program in place. So there's already some international fixtures set down for around that time, but whether they feel that they can change it, because obviously IPL is a massive competition, not only for the Indian Cricket Board, but for the players from all around the world. So, it's a competition that everybody wants to see up and running. But, we're all playing a waiting game at the moment.
And if you do end up staying in Papamoa or New Zealand for the next few months, what will you do?
Exercise my dog on the beach. I'll wait to see what's happening in terms of timelines, and if there is some other things that I can be doing once we get out of our next level, hopefully in a couple of weeks, I can start doing some work with some younger players that I work with while I'm back here. There's a bunch of young guys who I work with here in the Bay of Plenty region from a coaching point of view. I'll get on board with those guys and help them prepare for their upcoming season, and just see what comes my way, really.
Very good. We keep trying to keep these pods sort of shorter, but they seem to just keep ballooning out because there's just so much to talk about. But Shay, how's our list looking? We touched on the most important parts.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to ask before we go, I mean, Yorkshire runs through your veins. Any ambition to coach the county side long term? What does long term coaching aspirations look like for you in cricket? Or is there a move back to football and transitioning some of the learnings from cricket back into football?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I'm not too sure, Seamus. I think certainly when I did start coaching at senior men's level, maybe stepping back into the UK and having an opportunity over there was something that I did have as an ambition, but that's sort of lessened, I guess, in recent times. I guess it's just an opportunity of observing, where I can add some value to the programs coming up. I've done a little bit of part-time stuff for the Black Caps. I've obviously got my role with Mumbai, and beyond that, I'm not really looking too far ahead of myself. It's not a burning ambition. I'm not flicking my CV around here, there, and everywhere. But if somebody sees some value in my experience and the way I go about my business, then I'll always consider it. But I'm really happy where I'm at currently, and I hopefully can do a good job for those guys for the next 2 years and maybe beyond. But,
football-wise, any hint to get back into the football coaching ever again, or are we close that chapter and you're just going to look for Huddersfield Town results on the website?
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, my last foray into football was with the Aquinas College girls team. I think I did 3 years with their first 11, which sort of correspond with my daughter going through that school before she left for university, and I had a great time. It was good fun. In fact, we played one game against King's College from Auckland, and Paul Marshall, who'd done a lot of National League coaching, he was coaching the King's girls, and I was coaching the Aquinas girls, and I think we went through 60 minutes. I don't think there was a shot at goal. There wouldn't have been 3 passes put together in a row, and we were just standing on the sideline, yelling and screaming and laughing, and I think it's come to this, has it? But it's good fun. But that was my last foray into girls football. But let's see what the future brings, mate. Who knows?
Well, Jimmy, that's been brilliant. I feel like we could talk for another hour, but we are going to wrap it up. Maybe could be a future guest down the line. But thank you so much for taking the time and joining us tonight. And yeah, it's been great reconnecting and hearing about your incredible life story. Really, Shay, last words.
No, it's been awesome. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Like I say, we've talked a lot, but there's probably a few things that we could have gone into as well. But yeah, we'll maybe have another one in the future. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Cheers, Jimmy.